Hey everyone, welcome to Off the Mat, a podcast about two women's experience in Jiu-Jitsu and how that translates into our lives off the mat. I'm Justine, a bit of a renegade, outdoor enthusiast, and a white belt in Jiu-Jitsu.
And I'm Karina, a full-time student, creative artist, and also a white belt on my way to becoming a black belt.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Mat podcast.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening.
This is our 10th episode, I believe, which is kind of crazy.
Double digits, baby.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a while now. Hopefully getting the hang of it.
You guys let us know, please.
No, you guys should stop now.
Well, you're
That's good. But we wanted to have a bit of a more serious discussion today about trauma and martial arts, particularly in the last few years. There's been an influx of articles and research and initiatives to encourage survivors of different traumatic experiences to engage in martial arts and to engage in jiu-jitsu as a way of reclaiming power and healing. There was an article in The Guardian about it back in 2020 or 2021, and it's becoming more and more of a thing that is getting attention and recognition. And at least in our experience, we know quite a few people who have approached martial arts kind of wanting to reclaim power in some capacity, and I myself approached jiu-jitsu for that reason. And so we thought to explore this concept a bit today, especially because we do want to have this podcast be an avenue for women and men, but because women are sort of still the marginalized population in martial arts, to have an avenue for them to hear about certain experiences that maybe are not talked about off the mat.
Yeah, exactly. So we figured that we could kind of combine our female women lens and also combine our martial arts lens that we've kind of newly picked up on, and just bring awareness and bring to the table a conversation. And since we have opened ourselves up to a platform where we do have the opportunity to reach larger audiences, we thought it could be nice to talk about something where we each have a different perspective and experience on, but can still tell you our insights on
Yeah,
everything.
and hopefully provide a space for those perspectives and ideas to be heard and maybe be of use to other people who
Right.
are thinking in that way. So I personally come from a background of having experienced sexual trauma, and that was a huge component when I decided to start jiu-jitsu. It was a huge reason why I was hesitant as well to start jiu-jitsu,
Fair.
because I knew that I was walking into a situation that would be challenging and at the same time potentially healing. And I think I was first looking for female classes. I thought that would be the easier route to go. I couldn't find any here in Gainesville. So I walked into our first class, and I think at the time my motivation was that from my experiences I had felt powerless. I had felt stripped of my authority over my body, over my space, over my ability to say no, and I wanted some way to physically be able to reclaim that power and to be confident of that power. And I think it's quite a ubiquitous experience. We live in a world where, unfortunately, I think it's 1 in 6 women will either experience an attempted rape or a completed rape in their lifetime.
And 1 in 3 of those women are in the ages of 11 to 17 years old.
Which is horrific. I think on college campuses it goes up to 1 out of 4. And over 80% of women experience sexual harassment throughout their lifetime.
Probably more that's undocumented.
Probably more for all of these numbers, because they're largely unreported due
Right.
to shame and a host of other factors. But it's a widespread problem, and it's getting more attention. We had the Me Too movement, we had the Time's Up movement, where women are trying to give voice to these traumatic experiences, hold others accountable, and also become empowered in themselves as survivors of these experiences. And I'd shared with you back in October, I went to a retreat for survivors of sexual abuse, and we actually did Muay Thai during that retreat. So it's an acknowledged form of healing and recovery, and I think it's quite cool that space and that opportunity is provided.
When you went to that camp, was it all female or was it a co-ed?
No, so it's all women. It's a retreat, so actually for any listeners who are survivors of sexual abuse, it's a free retreat. It's through the unique foundation. It's called the Haven Retreat. And it's 3 days. All you have to do is get yourself there, and then everything else is taken care of. And they do a number of programs, and one of them was Muay Thai. And you see that, I was already doing Jiu-Jitsu. It's like, yeah, Muay Thai, I got this. It's different, of course. Like, you're kicking and punching and stuff. But you could see that people really light up when they feel empowered. And I think one of the reasons why I chose Jiu-Jitsu is because it really is the martial art that allows the little guy to win. It's a lot about power dynamics. And so in Jiu-Jitsu, you learn how to use your opponent's strength against them.
Yeah.
Like someone can be on top of me, and I can close my eyes, grab their arm, hip bump them, and then I'm the one on top.
Exactly.
Even if they're bigger than me.
Yes.
And that feeling, that knowledge that I have the ability to do that I can choke somebody, that I know how to get out from underneath somebody, even if they're bigger, which is what we've been practicing for so many months. It gives me, a sense of autonomy over my own space and over my own body.
It's empowering in and of itself, just knowing your body mechanics better than somebody else, and then being able to translate that into real life. I know when I sit in my classroom sometimes, and I just look around and I'm like, I could probably choke all of these people.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is usually, most of the time I would say we're rolling with people who are also training in Jiu-Jitsu, right? So they know the same things
that we do,
or are learning them. But you take someone off the street who doesn't know even the basics.
Perfect bait.
I mean, you're going to do well, even if they're bigger, because you know the weaknesses in human movement.
Right. I think that's what gives us that, that self-confidence from practicing jiu-jitsu. And I like that you mentioned that you were looking for female classes only at first. And I also looked for women's classes too. So not from your perspective. Mine was just, I'm a female. Sometimes it is nice to go into challenging things with your same gender,
Absolutely.
And I didn't find female-only classes either. But I think having that co-ed class is a challenge in itself, which has, lots of intricacies to it. But I wanted to ask you, because I have not experienced any sexual trauma in my life. So I am one of the very, very fortunate few of that small statistic that has not had any encounters like that. And I'm very, very privileged to say that. And I feel like my perspective is a little bit different because I don't have any problem rolling with a guy. I don't have any problem being in any position. I enjoy being tangled up as a snake, whatever it is.
Arms locked, what is our friend Austin the other day when I rolled with him, he was trying to put pressure on me from a top position. He's like, this is murder cuddling or something.
Oh my gosh. Right. For me it's fun, right? I have nothing attached to it that could make me feel a certain way.
Right.
So I wanted to know if you might have anything to share on where you have been challenged in class because of your previous experiences and how you overcame it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say first off that if I had walked into that first class and there had been no girls in the class, it would have been really hard for me to stay. I think that was
more tough for sure.
A very baseline level of security for me, and for the initial weeks of training, I really rolled mostly with girls.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was you, Miranda, there were a few other girls who were there training at the old place at the time. And my first real trigger occurred, and you already know this story, but I'll share it, is we were doing situational rolling, and we were doing rolling from closed guard, and there weren't that many people in the class, and we kept changing partners. So eventually you run out of the girls, you have to start going with the guys. So you usually start with kind of the guys your size, like the smaller guys. Ran out of those, and then I ended up having to go with a guy who was, gosh, he's probably 150 pounds bigger than me, potentially.
It's just massive, is a good word.
Big dude. And he is laying there with his legs spread open, and my job to do the drill is to go and sit between his legs. This was a no-gi class, so you're wearing super skin-tight clothes. And I had to press my vagina up against his body, where his genitalia was, and that's the position that you're in. That's the position that we find ourselves in when we roll. And it was really challenging because he was so big, and I was pretty new at the time, that I knew I wouldn't be able to get out of that position. Mm-hmm. There was just no way. Mm-hmm. Like, he would be able to overpower me.
Right.
And that feeling of helplessness, that feeling of like being overpowered, overwhelmed, was really intense. And that was the night, I think you weren't there in that class, and I told you afterwards, I was like, I just went home and cried in the shower, and
best cries are in the shower.
I took a break after that roll and was chugging my whole water bottle to try and keep the tears from coming out. And it was challenging, and it does cross my mind sometimes. I'm lucky that I'm pretty far in my journey of healing. I did at one point suffer from pretty severe PTSD, but that no longer is a factor in my day-to-day life. But there are those scenarios where, I'm aware of the power dynamic, and that power dynamic becomes overwhelming. And I think it's not actually, though, unique to people who have experienced that. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable in those situations. It just might not trigger such a deep, traumatic response.
Right. No, I mean, it reminds me of when we had that roll with that girl who was way out of our weight class.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was in my head, ready to tap just because of uncomfortableness. I was not getting choked and my arm was not getting broken. So being uncomfortable, whether it's because you've been really uncomfortable in the past or because you just don't like it, it's not easy to do. And it's something that we're faced with, very frequently. And I think that's what makes us tougher. As an athlete, as a jiu-jitsu athlete, just keep being in those positions and being in those places and having to overcome it because you have no choice. You have to do what you've been taught.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why my preference is training in gi classes. I like having that extra layer. For me, it's kind of like I put on my armor,
right.
And it's also ritualistic in a sense, where it puts you in a certain mindset. This is the outfit I wear when I'm fighting jiu-jitsu. I know it's a safe environment. Everything's there. No gi. I'm wearing the same clothes that I wear to the gym or to yoga, and it's a lot more close. The guys are wearing less clothes a lot of the time, and so yeah, I've always found no gi more challenging, especially rolling with men.
You're not ready for battle. You're you left out a big part.
It's where's my shield? Where's my sword?
It's funny because I enjoy no gi.
You like it a lot,
but I think because you can just set in chokes easier. And I don't know. I just feel like you can manhandle people more because there's no gi in the way.
Yeah.
But I can understand how that's a nice thing to have, each time.
For me, it's like a comfort, it's like a security blanket and it just puts me in the right mind space. And I know this is separate from the other parts of my life where these situations would be unfavorable.
Yeah. So maybe it helps to compartmentalize, so that way that we do this anyways, you bow on the mat, that you're on this mat to do jiu-jitsu and nothing else. So even though it symbolizes a lot of other things in life, we know that it's not.
And I notice too, if I'm particularly tired or exhausted, I'm more susceptible to being triggered in
Oh,
situations. Like that seminar weekend we had while training, I had to roll with somebody who was much bigger than me again, and just if I'm in like a good, healthy mindset, I'm able to compartmentalize and be like, no, I'm safe, this is fine, you know, this is somebody I know, who I talk to, like they're my well-wisher. But, you know, I was so physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted on those 2 days that I was almost in tears, like, while doing that drilling with that individual. And nothing that wrong that they did whatsoever.
Right.
But your body kind of carries with it certain emotions and memories that aren't necessarily in your conscious awareness, and it comes out in random ways.
We were exhausted. So to add that on top of battling all the other demons was kudos to you. Kudos to everybody who did that seminar.
Major shout out.
But when I was doing a little bit of research for our topic today, I came across an article that said why self-defense classes are not accurate in providing prevention for sexual assault. And at first I was just like angry. I was like, okay, like what the hell do you have to say? Click, you know?
I'm curious.
And I guess they were talking about how it became a trend in China for women to take up kickboxing classes and how they all thought like they were going to be safer on the streets. But, you know, I actually, at the end of the article and a couple other articles, I got, you know, came to the realization that they did have a point. So I think that self-defense, while it can't prevent sexual harassment, all it does is like reduce the risk. So we're not saying that, you know, taking these classes or doing all these extra steps is going to make it not happen, because we just have no control over that. But it does reduce the risk because we are, you know, honing in on these skills that will help us. You know, we're on top of all of our physical things and chokes and takedowns, we're also, you know, learning assertiveness, we're learning awareness, we're learning like body mechanics, you know, so not just, you know, setting the choke in, but hey, like, you know, this person is, you know, in this certain position. Okay, I am aware, now I can do this, you know, I'm going to be assertive. If they did something that hurt me, or if I need to say sorry, I need to verbally confront that. Yeah. And we get to work on all of those other aspects, but not necessarily reduce any, or not necessarily prevent anything, but we are reducing our risk.
Well, I think you could never reduce other people, or like reduce the risk of other people's actions towards you, right? So all you have power over is your response. And so I think those classes, obviously they're going to vary in efficacy depending on what you're training on and where you're training and who's training you, right? And to what degree you're invested in growing in that. But you will be more empowered to respond in those situations. Like, you know, Jiu-Jitsu, it's really meant for fighting on the ground. So if someone has a gun, Jiu-Jitsu is really not going to be that effective against it. But in my head, like my parents would ask me this question, you know, and we would have a conversation about it. And you're like, how's it going to work against someone with a weapon? It won't. Like, I can't, you know, bump them off me with,
try a gun. Jump a triangle choke on them.
But maybe as they're going through whatever they're trying to do, they'll put down the gun, and then I'll be able to act.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, if someone's trying to attack me sexually, they're probably going to put down the gun at some point when they think they have established power. Well, and then I'll know how to act if I'm beneath them.
Well, you know what, even with our grips, if they do have a gun, we know the certain ways to take somebody's hand off of you, which way you got to move your wrist. So if it does come to that close proximity where you're like a foot away, we would be better off.
And we did start, the first month we were training was self-defense month. I think I was just way too new in Jiu-Jitsu for anything to be retained. Because all the moves, everything was just so new and overwhelming that was before any retention started kicking in.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe next time around,
it'll
stick a bit more. But yeah, I think it can be effective, even what you were saying, just in terms of the mindset that you develop and that you have access to, that you feel capable of defending yourself and of feeling confident and empowered to say no, to communicate, even if that means communicating in ways that you're not used to communicating.
Yeah, like choking them. I don't communicate with my mouth, I communicate with my elbows, with my shoulders.
Yeah, this is a new way. She doesn't like what you're doing, just like make you pass out for a little bit with a nice little rear naked joke there.
I gotta get better at that joke for sure.
I like the one that we were learning in class this week. That seems, I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, you basically like X out their face.
Yeah.
And like just
I really
lean in
enjoy
with
it.
the pressure.
Yeah,
I
I tried it in a roll and it worked. It's like,
nice.
yeah, I
That
like
was
this joke.
quick. Okay. Yeah, we're learning spider guard too, which I really enjoy because you get to like push and pull somebody's body and you just get to contort them, and then I just find it really fun.
It is. It's kind of like you're a puppeteer of the other person.
Yes, exactly.
But it's interesting that they have that article, because my personal opinion is that it's better to do something than nothing. So even if it's like a psychological benefit, go for it. I learned self-defense, in like 6th grade, and I don't remember any of it besides I kick them in the balls.
Oh my god, that's so funny. And I think in 6th grade I watched a puberty video. Like that was about it.
That was it? They talk about
they like put all the girls in one classroom, like put all the boys in one, and then turn off the lights, and they're like, okay, we're gonna watch a video today.
So I got self-defense, you got puberty knowledge.
Yeah.
Great. Together it's unstoppable.
I just have you attached to the hip at all times.
Yeah.
We'll be good. I had another question that I wanted to ask you, since you have this, this harrowing past that does provide you with difference of thoughts,
Special.
of insights. So, you do have these moments where sometimes you struggle in class, and you have to overcome these things. So, what might you recommend for someone that is similar to your position? They've started a self-defense class, they've taken that leap, but they may be experiencing these challenges in class. What can somebody do, or what have you done that's maybe helped you, whether it's mental preparation, physical preparation?
I think communication is key.
Okay.
I think first, I was and have been super lucky that where I train, I have really wonderful people around me who are very loving and compassionate and supportive. Yes, like Karina, she's pointing at herself for those of you who are not watching the video version. And so I think that's a huge help, because then somebody knows what's going on and they can be there to support you in the classes. I know I had told one of the girls about it, and then she would kind of jump in ahead of me when we were playing King of the Mat or different games where you don't have a choice about who you roll with. If it was someone who I didn't feel comfortable rolling with, she would go and step in, or she would call someone else to step in. She had been there longer, so she had a bit more authority than I did to kind of redirect people.
But Heart of Gold she has, for sure.
Yeah, and then, coaches also can fulfill that role. Our coach, Mary Beth, who we had on our last episode, she does that, not just for me, but for people in general. She's very aware of kind of who's good to roll with who. If there's, probably we are still considered spastic white belts, but like a very strong young male spastic white belt is like a bit of a danger. Yeah. So she'll kind of navigate those things. So I think that really helps if you're able to communicate. And really, I think it's about your motivation. Like for me, I was pretty set on continuing to train even after kind of that first really intense triggering experience. And then I think it was maybe a month or two after that I rolled with that guy again, and it was totally fine. And I had worked on it in my head, okay, this is interesting that this came up, but I was safe. He's a nice guy. I'm surrounded by people who care about me. And so I think having that community really makes it a lot easier to train. And that's a point that we've talked about so often in our podcast. And even Mary Beth talked about it last week, that martial arts really can provide you with a very sweet and supportive community to be a part of. And
It's the truth.
I feel invaluably lucky that I am training with the people that I train with, where I do feel like I have that support. And I do have people who will step in and be like, yeah, I'll roll with this person, you're good. And it happens less and less. I think the more you stick with it, the easier it gets.
Right, yeah. You've got the perseverance in there, you've got the willpower and the determination. You know, if starting the self-defense class was a step towards helping yourself, you gotta see it through to the end.
And I love having us there in the classes too, and other women, because I know that the same way I felt reassured seeing other females when I walked in the door, other people will feel reassured by seeing us there. And I've heard that already, that people who have come to train, they see that there are other girls training, and then they are like, yeah, I think I can do this. And that was something that you had actually talked about way early on when we were first starting to train in Jiu-Jitsu.
Having other, like, girls to...
No, that you were like, I feel like it's really cool that we're doing this because there's only like 2 girls in the gym today, but more girls are gonna come, they're gonna see us here, and there's gonna be like 5 girls and then 10 girls, and it's just gonna grow.
It was nice having that one class where we were both there and a new girl was starting her first class or whatever it was, and we were able to kind of help her through it. But I can imagine it must have been nice for her to have, 2+ girls there. And not that somebody first starting into a class would know whether that's a lot or a little, but you do know that when you're going into a martial arts class, or a dojo in general, you know that's going to be male dominated.
Yeah, I mean, to date, my very worst class was a class that I was in where there were no girls and it was
by
just
yourself.
me.
I was not there. I left her.
Yeah, that was a terrible class. Not because of the men who were there, but yeah, it was just a...
And we have bad classes, we have good classes, but I always tell myself that at the end of the class, you're going to feel great. And I always keep that in mind because, man, sometimes before class, you are just not wanting to go. Nothing is going to make you feel better about going other than actually going. And then once you sweat it out and once you realize that you've improved a tiny bit or you learn something new, I mean, there's so much opportunity to feel good in class, if that makes sense.
I mean, you get a lot of endorphins from...
Yeah. Whether it's like just getting your heart rate raising or through the repetitions that we do, you're able to do at least one thing right in class. And so that will motivate you. And then at the end, you're like, you know what, I am happy that I went. And so I always try and keep that in mind.
Yeah.
For the times when I'm like, I don't want to go. Because it's never wrong. You're going to feel good.
Yeah, and I think, obviously I come from a certain background that Karina doesn't share, but we both have found, I think, empowerment in doing Jiu-Jitsu. And I know for me, I walk down the street with a lot more confidence and security. And I'm a bit of a risk taker, so I have been known to be in situations where they're not necessarily the most safe. But normally the times I feel the most unsafe is just when I'm walking down city streets or something like that, and some guy's catcalling or doing something inappropriate. And now I can calm that panic that rises a bit more because I feel confident that should they do something, I have some tools in my arsenal that I can use.
Yeah.
I'm a stronger version of myself now than I was when things had happened previously.
I truly feel confident in my dominance. So whether it's on the street and somebody is, acting a little crazy, I have that inside me now more than ever. And it's just growing and growing the more that I take class and the more that I get older and experience things. But I mean, jiu-jitsu, self-defense, martial arts, that's definitely been a catalyst to me coming into that and really accepting that we're making a change, I think, in the industry and within ourselves. And I think it's all for the better, and I think that's what contributes to us feeling so confident and feeling so good.
Yeah, and I think if it's something that you're thinking of pursuing, it can be something that's healing, that's empowering, that gives you confidence, and that helps you to reclaim something that you might have, that you might feel like you've lost.
Yeah.
You know, it gives you a lot of, you even said, I think, in one of our previous episodes that you just, or maybe it was when we were in the car, we just talked to each other
We
a lot.
talk way too much, guys.
That you just feel like you know your body a lot more.
Yes.
And
oh, man.
a main thing that happens, well, one of the consequences of sexual trauma sometimes is disassociation from your body.
Okay.
You feel very detached from it because it was the source of pain. And Jiu-Jitsu can really kind of ground you back into that because you learn, my body can actually be a weapon.
Yes.
And what are the strengths that my body has? What are the abilities that my body has? Like, Jiu-Jitsu kind of gives you, like, little mini superpowers, you know?
Oh
like,
my God, 100%.
You can do things you never thought you could do.
Yes.
And so I think even without having that background of a trauma, you also experience that you're like, yeah, I know my body so much more. You feel connected to your body. You know exactly where you need to put the foam roller when you're feeling some ache or pain.
Every day.
Yeah. So all of these things come together to kind of make you a stronger, more holistic, and I keep using this word, so sorry for the redundancy, but a more empowered person.
It's a beautiful word.
And so I think for me that's really why martial arts, why Jiu-Jitsu is gaining traction as a way for particularly females to reclaim their power when they're coming from a past like this. And we live in a patriarchal society, so most women, regardless of having one experience or the other, will benefit from reclaiming some power in their lives. So it's not limited to, you know, oh, I check off these marks of traumatic experiences, so I will be empowered by this. I think across the board, we live in a society that we should be uplifting women and making them feel physically, emotionally, mentally competent and strong in themselves.
Right, despite any hardships that they've gone through.
Despite anything.
Yeah, and I appreciate you, coming on today and opening up and answering, difficult questions and going into those areas so that we can, have our listeners and anybody who might catch wind of this, understand that, the effects of sexual violence are real and they can impact you on your daily
100%.
basis in your training, but they're not the end-all be-all. And, at the end of the day, it can be something that brings you into your own empowerment. I think that's the word of the day, truly.
Yeah, and it gives you it teaches you a level of resilience. And the one last thing I'll say, just because it's coming to my mind now that Robert Drysdale had touched on, is he said that when you compete, that's the best way to practice jiu-jitsu as self-defense. But he had said that in a competition, that's the best way to practice self-defense because you're going against an opponent you've never seen before. It's at that heightened, high level of intensity. And we've had that experience now, so we're one step closer.
We are. We're like 7 steps closer. I don't know what we're closer to, but we're closer.
We're going in the direction of winning.
Exactly.
That's what he said. Shout out to Robert Drysdale. Thank you for the wise words.
Awesome, man.
So, yeah, I think that's all we really wanted to touch on today. And let us know after our 10th episode how we're doing, if there are topics you guys would want to hear us discuss, if there are themes, ideas, guests with a certain expertise that we can try and get on the podcast, and whether it's on the mat
or
off the mat. We'll see you soon.